Imagine a world on the brink of annihilation, where two superpowers, locked in an ideological struggle, were ready to use any means necessary to emerge victorious. What would you choose? A world defined by freedom or one ruled by control? This was the Cold War, the battle for ideologies that shaped the 20th century and the future of humanity. Stay tuned, because the story isn't as black and white as you think. As World War II ended in 1945, the world was left shattered, but two nations emerged from the wreckage with unmatched power: the United States with its capitalist democracy, and the Soviet Union, driven by communist ideals. It didn't take long for these giants to come to blows, not on the battlefield, but in the minds of people across the globe. The Cold War began not with a single shot, but with a single question: which ideology will dominate the world? As the Iron Curtain descended across Eastern Europe, the world watched in horror. The Soviet Union began to tighten its grip on Eastern Europe, spreading communist influence. On the other side, the United States saw this as a direct threat to freedom and democracy, launching a campaign of containment. But this wasn't just about land, it was about the very soul of humanity. Would the future belong to the free or to the oppressed? But it wasn't just Europe where the Cold War raged. No, this ideological conflict spread across the globe, into every corner of society, every street, every home, and the stakes higher than ever before. The Cold War was no longer confined to words. It became a series of proxy wars. In places like Korea, Vietnam, and Cuba, the US and the USSR didn't directly clash. Instead, they used other nations as their battlegrounds, funding rival factions to wage wars that cost millions of lives. Fear, uncertainty, and violence defined the lives of those caught in the middle, and the stakes, catastrophic. Imagine this: the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Just one misstep and the world could have plunged into nuclear warfare. The US had missiles pointed at the USSR, and the USSR had missiles pointed at the US. Do you feel the weight of that moment? But here's the question: how did we not destroy each other? How did the world manage to stay on the edge without falling into the abyss? And yet the Cold War was far from over. In fact, it was about to get even more intense. By the late 1980s, the Cold War was in its final stages. The Soviet Union, once a towering empire, began to crumble under the weight of economic failure and internal unrest. In 1989, the unthinkable happened. The Berlin Wall came down, and with it, the symbol of division between East and West. But this wasn't just a moment of triumph. It was the end of an era. For decades, the world had teetered on the edge of total destruction, but now the Soviet system was unraveling. Was it the triumph of capitalism and democracy? Or was the ideological battle just beginning, masked in new forms? The Cold War's legacy doesn't just live in the history books. It shaped our politics, our economies, and even our daily lives. And the question lingers: could the world ever go back to such extreme divisions again? But wait, before you think it's all over, let's pause. The Cold War may have ended, but the ideological battle continues in ways we may not even realize. What happens when superpowers clash today? What if the next Cold War is not about bombs or missiles, but something even more dangerous? This story isn't finished yet. Stay with me, because the echoes of the Cold War might still be shaping our world today. If you want to learn more about how ideological struggles shaped history, check out my next video on key moments that shaped the American Revolution, because understanding the past is key to understanding where we're headed. You won't want to miss it.